Welcome to another episode of Fortinet Live. I'm Troy Ament, Fortinet's field CISO for healthcare, and I'm joined today by Derek Manky, our Chief of Security Insights at FortiGuard. We'll be talking about ransomware in healthcare and life sciences. Thank you for joining me, Derek.
Troy, it's great to be here. Glad to chat.
So let's start off here with our recent threat report. What have we seen around ransomware most recently?
Oh, it's omnipresent, Troy. I mean, we're seeing it across all verticals, sectors, and healthcare is no exception to that. It traditionally has been a target for ransomware, but it's not going away. If we look at the first half of 2021, we've seen nearly 11-fold to 10.7-fold increase, to be precise, in all of ransomware activity we've been observing. So, cyber criminals are really doubling down, I like to say now, and really hedging their bets, going against all these different verticals and getting quite aggressive.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing is, not only is it being more persistent, we're seeing more activity within healthcare, but I think what's kind of most alarming is they're getting a lot more insight into what does a health system look like on the inside, right? So as the adversaries position their ransomware, they're specifically targeting areas such as underlying infrastructure, domain infrastructure, those types of things. I'm interested in your feedback though as well. To that end, once you kind of get that type of hold on a health system, it affects all things connected to that environment.
Yeah, and to your point, the reason this is happening and why, quite frankly, they're able to be more aggressive is there's really a blend, Troy, in between traditional APT groups, so which are usually nation state and targeted attacks, with cyber crime, like organized cyber crime groups now. These organized cyber crime groups are deeply funded because they've been reaping profits through ransomware over the years. And that's another trend shift that we've seen. Yes, we're seeing a lot of volume, and that still exists, but we're also seeing these high profile and targeted systematic attacks that are happening in cyber crime, i.e. ransomware, not just an APT group. And so to your point, and able to execute that, and because they have the deep funding, they have these different business units in their organizations, and they're able to get insight into, this is the reconnaissance phase of the kill chain. They're doing much more of that with cyber crime now. So they're able to get blueprint information on applications and services that are running in open ports and all those sorts of things. By understanding that, they know where they can hit those organizations where it hurts, where they're going to be, more likely to pay. In other words, in a precarious position, because again, it comes down to business decisions often. If it's at that point in time when organizations are hit by ransom, do you pay it or do you not? Of course, we recommend not to. But going back to your question, Troy, it's because they have this deeper knowledge and understanding, and they're taking the time to premeditate these attacks. It becomes much more critical to be prepared for that and defend.
When we talk about preparation, I think a lot of CISOs and CIOs, what they're seeing is defense in depth, things that are really important, zero trust and multi-factor authentication. Yeah. But when they look at their operations, when there is a ransomware attack, it's hitting the core. The adversaries. You're kind of speaking to, reconnaissance that was being done. We're seeing, the laboratory departments, cardiology, radiology, and pharmacy, both inpatient and retail pharmacy. Those 3 or 4 different areas within the health system, when impacted and disabled, they affect the entire ecosystem within the health system, right? So they've gotten much better in their reconnaissance. They know that they don't have to attack, the whole environment. If they detect and are able to compromise just a few areas that are so pivotal to a health system, they're able to really impact those operations. So when we talked about the threat report, was there any good news in general about trends that you're seeing?
Yeah, so there's definitely some positive takeaways. So obviously, we always talk about the reality, which is there's a lot of bad things out there, and all these things that we talked about. Those interdependencies are definitely part of that bad news story. I agree. We're seeing that even in other verticals as well, where again, when they know that they have a target and they've achieved that, they're using that as part of their ransom demand, of course, right? So that is the bad news. The good news is I'm seeing progress, and we've highlighted this in the report in terms of the fight on cybercrime, right? We always say that we as an industry, right, are always behind the cyber criminals, right? We're chasing them a lot of the times, but there's a lot of good proactive work that's being done to really, get ahead of the game and to disrupt the cyber criminals. Like we have to send a message back, right? We can't let ransomware to continue to be as prolific as it is, because those pockets are getting deeper on the cyber criminals end. And so there's a couple of things, right? And we can talk about the disruption theme. There's multiple ways to do this. From an industry perspective, and what we do at FortinetLIVE, as an example, we're working with law enforcement, we're working with threat intelligence sharing. That's a way we can increase network resiliency, to guard against these attacks, to reduce that reconnaissance effort, to actually take down, in some cases to go and arrest these cyber criminals. But in the threat landscape report, we highlighted botnet activity as an example, right? We're actually seeing some of these threats that have been pushed to the edge now. So IoT-based botnets as an example, TrickBot, Emotet was another one, NetWalker. These are all things that have been notorious for spreading ransomware that have been actually taken offline as a result of private and public sector working together. Emotet's a great example we highlighted in the report. When the takedown effort proceeded in January of this year, it was literally reduced to half the amount of activity, and it hasn't recovered since. It's been sitting at that half activity mark ever since. TrickBot was another one who went offline for 6 months. We noted it came back, at the end of Q2, but again, not nearly as prolific as it was before. So there's some good things happening there.
Yeah, and I think, to kind of build upon that, Derek, what I'm seeing amongst health systems is, sometimes we don't hear the good news in the media, right? Or, the good story doesn't always come to the top. It's the bad story, the attack that really compromises an organization. But I would agree with you. There are some really great stories out there. I've had, collaborations with a lot of organizations that are, 5 to 10 years. If you kind of look at healthcare, a lot of health systems started taking information security, seriously, 10 years ago at best, right? Really building up their programs. But those organizations that have really put in a defense in depth and created strong, public and private partnerships and building out their security operations and moving into zero trust. There's some great stories about organizations that had a significant security incident that, really had eyes on glass 24/7 and really great threat response with partnerships, and we're able to mitigate, a significant downtime. Now, what we're seeing in the significant downtimes in healthcare are things like 4 to 6 weeks of downtime within your clinical EMR, having problems even admitting patients and transferring patients, and getting prescriptions and lab results and test results during the global pandemic. It's really unprecedented.
Yeah. Agility is really key with this, especially in the world of threat intelligence, being able to identify these issues before they become a bigger problem, like I was talking about before. That's actually part of the disruption effort as well, right? Because it comes back to that kill chain analogy, right? Obviously, if you can reduce your visibility into external footprint, all that sort of stuff, that it's going to make it more of a guessing game for attackers. That's part of that disruption. But then also, being prepared in advance and being able to identify when these threats come knocking on your door, because it's another thing we highlighted in the threat landscape report. There's a new high resolution intelligence model, which is really looking at the methodologies, not just the what. Yeah, okay, we know it's ransomware, but how are they trying to move through systems? And And we've highlighted for the first time a lot of these techniques that they're using, and it's no surprise, but it's a reality. They're trying to get around security, threat intelligence and threat detection. They always have, but we've seen a heavy focus on that. And by that same token, it's really important to be able to have good, quality threat intelligence, the right inspection points to be able to detect these things, so that you can respond quickly. Again, before it becomes a 3 to 4 week downtime problem on these networks like you're talking about.
Well, Derek, thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for another session of Fortinet Live. For more information about today's topic, please visit our blog or visit us at fortinet.com/healthcare.
Thanks, Trey.